Security cameras don't lie. On the night of November 14th, hospital footage captured 3.2 seconds that would expose one of Austin's most respected businessmen as a monster. 3.2 seconds of a pregnant woman's body falling. But the fall itself wasn't the crime. It was the hand that pushed her. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had everything: a prestigious career as head of trauma surgery, a beautiful home in Austin's wealthiest neighborhood, and a husband the entire city admired. What no one knew was that behind closed doors, she was living a nightmare that would eventually claim 3 lives before she could escape. This isn't just a story about domestic violence. It's about how a predator systematically destroyed everyone who tried to help his victim, how therapists can betray you, how brake lines can be cut to look like accidents, how car explosions can seem like gas leaks, and how far one woman had to go to save herself and her unborn child. What you're about to hear will make you angry. It will break your heart, but it will also show you something powerful: how courage can emerge from the darkest places, and how one woman's survival became a revolution that saved thousands of others. This is Sarah Mitchell's story, and fair warning, you won't be able to look away. The security footage would later show exactly 3.2 seconds. That's how long it took for Sarah Mitchell's body to fall from the top of the hospital stairwell to the landing below. 3.2 seconds to shatter the illusion of a perfect life. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. 6 months earlier, Sarah stood in the attending physician's lounge at Austin General Hospital, adjusting her white coat in the mirror. At 29, she'd just been named head of trauma surgery, the youngest in the hospital's history. Her hand, steady enough to repair a torn aorta, trembled slightly as she smoothed her collar over the bruise on her collarbone. "Congratulations, Sarah." Dr. Elena Cross appeared behind her, the hospital's chief of surgery and Sarah's mentor for the past 5 years. "You've earned this. Your father must be proud." Sarah's smile came automatically. "Practiced." "He is. Dad's planning a celebration dinner." Elena studied her reflection. "And Marcus, how's he taking the news?" The question hung in the air. Sarah's husband, Marcus Bennett, had built his reputation as Austin's most successful real estate developer. His face smiled from billboards across the city, promising to build dreams. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. "He's thrilled," Sarah lied smoothly. "You know Marcus. He's always been my biggest supporter." The truth, hidden beneath her long sleeves and careful makeup, told a different story. Marcus had responded to her promotion by slamming her against their granite kitchen counter, his breath hot with whiskey and rage. "You think you're better than me now. Think you can embarrass me." That had been 3 nights ago. Sarah had told the ER nurse who treated her sprained wrist that she'd slipped on their deck stairs. The nurse, someone Sarah supervised, had accepted the explanation without question. Who would suspect Dr. Sarah Mitchell, daughter of retired FBI profiler James Mitchell, of being trapped in an abusive marriage? Sometimes the most dangerous prisons have no visible bars. Elena touched her shoulder gently. "Sarah, if you ever need to talk about anything, and I mean anything, my door is always open." For a moment, Sarah considered it, considered breaking the silence that had become her constant companion. But shame is a powerful silencer, and so is fear. "Thank you, Elena. That means everything." That evening, Sarah drove home to their sprawling house in Westlake Hills, one of Austin's most exclusive neighborhoods. The house Marcus had designed himself, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and imported Italian marble. The house that felt more like a museum than a home. The house where she'd learned to walk quietly, speak carefully, and never ever make Marcus look small. She found him in his office, surrounded by architectural plans and empty beer bottles. His eyes tracked her movement as she entered, and she recognized the dangerous stillness in his posture. "You're late. Surgery ran long. A car accident victim." "You didn't text." Sarah's heart rate accelerated. She had texted. She always texted. But Marcus's rules shifted like sand, impossible to anticipate. "I'm sorry. The patient was critical, and I don't pay for this house, for your lifestyle, so you can ignore me." "Marcus, I texted you at 4:15. Check your phone." His hand moved so fast she barely saw it coming. The slap echoed in the silence, and Sarah tasted blood where her teeth cut her inner cheek. She stood frozen, one hand pressed to her burning face, the other instinctively protecting her abdomen. Because Sarah had a secret she'd discovered just that morning in the hospital bathroom, staring at two pink lines on a pregnancy test, 8 weeks along, according to the dates, 8 weeks of new life growing inside her while she navigated a marriage that felt more like warfare. Marcus's face shifted, fury transforming into something approaching remorse. It was a performance Sarah had witnessed dozens of times. "Baby, I'm sorry. You know I don't mean it. Work has been stressful, and when you don't communicate, I worry." He pulled her close, his embrace feeling more like restraint than comfort. "I love you so much. Sometimes I love you too much. You understand that, right?" Sarah nodded against his chest, silent tears soaking his expensive shirt. She understood perfectly. She understood that she was trapped. She understood that the man she'd married 4 years ago, the charming developer who'd swept her off her feet during her residency, had been a carefully constructed facade. She understood that somewhere along the way, love had curdled into ownership. What she didn't understand yet was how much worse it could get. That night, as Marcus slept beside her, Sarah lay awake in the darkness, one hand on her still flat stomach. She thought about the life forming inside her, wondered if a baby might change things, wondered if becoming a father might soften the rage that lived inside her husband like a coiled snake. It was a hope that would nearly destroy her. Sarah waited 3 weeks before telling Marcus about the pregnancy. She planned it carefully, choosing a Thursday evening at Uchi, their favorite restaurant. Public spaces felt safer. Marcus's charm never slipped in front of witnesses. He'd been in a good mood all week. A major development deal had closed, bringing in millions. Sarah had learned to read his moods like weather patterns, timing important conversations for the rare sunny days. "Marcus, I have something to tell you." She reached across the white tablecloth, taking his hand. "I'm pregnant. Almost 11 weeks. His expression froze, smile fixed in place like a mask, but his grip on her hand tightened painfully. "Pregnant. I know we hadn't planned it yet, but we—" His voice remained low, controlled, but Sarah heard the undercurrent of rage. "You mean you hadn't planned it? This was your decision. Marcus, it takes two people to— Don't—" He released her hand, sitting back in his chair. To anyone watching, they might have been discussing vacation plans. "You did this deliberately, thought you'd trap me." Sarah's throat constricted. "I would never. We'll discuss this at home." The drive back was silent, ominous. Sarah's hands rested protectively over her stomach as Marcus navigated the dark roads too fast. When they pulled into the garage, he didn't turn off the engine immediately. "Get rid of it!" "What? You heard me. You're a surgeon? You have connections. Get rid of it. Marcus, this is our baby. Our—" He grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. "It's a mistake. You're not ready to be a mother. Your career is just starting. Think about what you're throwing away." Sarah pulled free, stumbling from the car. She made it to the kitchen before he caught up. The argument that followed was the worst yet. Marcus's control shattered completely, and for the first time, Sarah feared for her life. "You think you can trap me, force me into this?" He backed her against the counter, his face inches from hers. "I won't be controlled by you or anyone else. I'm not trying to control you. I'm just—" His shove sent her sprawling. Sarah's hip connected with the marble countertop with devastating force, and she crumpled to the floor. Pain exploded through her abdomen, sharp and terrible. She felt warmth spreading between her legs and knew, with the clinical detachment of her medical training, exactly what was happening. "Marcus," her voice came out weak, frightened. "Call an ambulance, please, the baby." For a moment, he simply stared at her, his chest heaving. Then something shifted in his expression. Not quite remorse, more like calculation. He pulled out his phone and dialed, his voice transforming into concern so genuine that Sarah almost believed it herself. "Yes, my wife fell. She's pregnant. Please hurry." At the hospital, Sarah's colleagues rushed to help. The ER attending, Dr. Ramon Diaz, someone she'd trained with, examined her with gentle efficiency. "Sarah, what happened?" Marcus answered before she could. "She was getting a glass from the upper cabinet, lost her balance. I should have been there to catch her." Sarah met Ramon's eyes, saw the question there. saw the moment he decided to accept Marcus's explanation. Because who would believe that Dr. Sarah Mitchell, competent, confident, accomplished, could be anything other than what she appeared? I'm sorry, Sarah. Ramon's voice was soft. We're losing the heartbeat. She already knew, had known from the moment she hit the floor. 8 weeks and 3 days of hope, extinguished in seconds. Marcus held her hand through the procedure, playing the devastated husband so convincingly that even Sarah almost forgot the truth. He brought flowers the next day, called her constantly, told everyone how broken he was over their loss. And Sarah, drowning in grief and shock, let herself believe it might be real. Let herself believe that this tragedy might be the catalyst for change. That maybe, just maybe, Marcus's horror at what had happened would make him stop. It was the first of many times she would mistake manipulation for love. 2 weeks later, after appropriate grieving time in the eyes of their friends and colleagues, Marcus took her to dinner at the same restaurant, the same table, even. He held both her hands and looked into her eyes with such apparent sincerity that Sarah's resolve wavered. I've been thinking about what happened, about us. I want to change. Sarah, I need to change. Will you help me? She wanted so desperately to believe him, wanted to believe that the man she'd fallen in love with still existed somewhere beneath the anger. So when he suggested couples therapy, she agreed immediately, seeing it as proof of his commitment. Dr. Richard Cole's office occupied a renovated Victorian house near downtown. Tasteful, expensive, exactly the kind of place that wealthy Austin couples went to fix their marriages. Marcus had chosen him personally, praised his credentials. What Sarah didn't notice during that first session was the photograph on Dr. Cole's desk. A college fraternity picture, faded with age. Marcus, 20 years younger, his arm around a laughing young man who would one day become Dr. Richard Cole. Some traps are built by the people you trust to set you free. Dr. Richard Cole had the kind of face that inspired confidence, silver hair, warm eyes, a voice like aged bourbon. In their first session, he created what felt like a safe space. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, a white noise machine that made the world outside disappear. Sarah, Marcus, thank you for trusting me with your story. He settled into his leather chair, notepad balanced on his knee. I want you both to know that this space is confidential. What's said here stays here. My only goal is to help you build a healthier relationship. Sarah felt tension she didn't know she'd been carrying start to ease. Finally, someone to help them navigate the darkness that had swallowed their marriage. Sarah, why don't you start what brings you here? She glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. We've been having communication issues, arguments that escalate. I want to learn better ways to. She thinks I'm the problem. Marcus's interruption was smooth, accompanied by a self-deprecating smile. And she's not entirely wrong. I have a temper. My father was the same way. It's something I struggle with. Dr. Cole nodded, making notes. That's honest. Marcus, recognizing patterns is the first step. Sarah, how do these arguments affect you? Sarah chose her words carefully, aware of Marcus's attention like pressure against her skin. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells sometimes, afraid to say the wrong thing. Can you give me an example? She described a recent incident, carefully editing the violence from the narrative, made it sound like raised voices and slammed doors rather than hands around her throat. Dr. Cole listened, asked clarifying questions, seemed genuinely invested in understanding. Over the next 3 sessions, Sarah felt herself opening up more. Dr. Cole created exercises for them, communication techniques, strategies for de-escalation, homework assignments designed to rebuild trust. Marcus participated enthusiastically, completing every assignment, speaking the language of therapy with surprising fluency. I can see real progress, Dr. Cole announced in their 4th session. Marcus, you're doing excellent work. Sarah, I'd like to talk about your role in these conflicts. Sometimes partners in high-stress careers bring workplace intensity into their personal relationships. Do you think your demanding schedule might contribute to tension at home? Sarah blinked, surprised. I suppose it could. The hospital is stressful. And when you're stressed, how does that manifest? Do you become withdrawn, Critical. I, Sarah faltered, trying to remember specific instances. Maybe sometimes I'm distracted. Emotionally unavailable. Would you say, Dr. Cole's pen moved across his notepad. Marcus, do you experience Sarah's work stress as abandonment? Sometimes, Marcus admitted, his voice heavy with manufactured vulnerability. I know her career is important, but there are nights when she comes home and it's like she's not really there. Like I'm alone even when we're in the same room. Sarah felt guilt bloom in her chest. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. Over subsequent sessions, the focus shifted subtly but unmistakably. Dr. Cole probed Sarah's childhood, her relationship with her father, her perfectionism. Each session, Marcus's behavior was reframed as reactive. His anger became a response to her emotional distance. His violence became frustration at being unable to reach her. Sarah, desperate to save her marriage, internalized every suggestion, worked harder to be present, started taking anxiety medication, Dr. Cole prescribed, blamed herself when Marcus's temper flared. What she couldn't see was the bigger picture being painted, a picture that would later be used to question her stability, her fitness as a mother, her credibility as a witness. 6 months into therapy, Sarah discovered she was pregnant again. 12 weeks this time before she knew, her irregular cycles and demanding schedule masking the signs. She told Marcus at Dr. Cole's suggestion, during a session where the therapist could help them process the news. Marcus's face lit up with apparent joy. Sarah, that's wonderful. A second chance. How do you feel about this? Sarah, Dr. Cole watched her carefully. Scared, she admitted. After what happened before, the miscarriage was traumatic for both of you. Dr. Cole's voice was gentle. But that was an accident. Correct, you fell. Sarah hesitated, caught between truth and self-preservation. Yes, an accident. Then there's no reason to think this pregnancy will be different. Marcus, I'd like you to be especially supportive during this time. Sarah's anxiety about the pregnancy is understandable, but could become unhealthy if unchecked. The word unhealthy would appear 17 times in Dr. Cole's notes. Notes that painted a picture of an emotionally unstable woman whose career stress and perfectionism created an intolerable home environment. Notes that described Marcus as a patient, loving husband trying desperately to reach his distant wife. Notes written by Marcus's former fraternity brother, though Sarah wouldn't discover this connection until much later. That night, Sarah lay in bed with her hand on her stomach, feeling the flutter of life inside her. 13 weeks now, a girl, according to the early genetic testing. She tried to feel joy but felt only dread, heavy as a stone in her chest. In the darkness, Marcus wrapped his arm around her. Everything's going to be different this time. I promise. Sarah wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. Because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate that she was trapped. That the therapy was another cage. That the man beside her was incapable of the change she desperately needed him to make. Sometimes the most dangerous prisons are built with good intentions and professional credentials. Outside, the Austin night was alive with sound cicadas, distant traffic, the ordinary noise of people living ordinary lives. Sarah listened to it and felt impossibly far away, as if she existed in a different dimension where normal rules didn't apply. She had no way of knowing that her best friend Megan was, at that moment, sitting in her own apartment across town, staring at her phone. Megan had noticed things: the long sleeves in summer, the way Sarah flinched at sudden movements, the excuses that came too quickly. Megan had made a decision. Tomorrow, she would call a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, would gather information for Sarah, create an escape route, be ready when Sarah was finally ready to leave. Tomorrow, Megan would die. Megan Torres had been Sarah's best friend since medical school. They'd studied together, survived residency together, celebrated each other's triumphs and consoled each other's failures. Megan knew Sarah better than anyone, which meant she'd recognized the signs long before Sarah was ready to admit the truth. The morning of her death, Megan called Sarah between surgeries. Lunch today, my treat. Sarah, exhausted from a complicated procedure and morning sickness, almost declined. I don't know if I can. Please, I need to talk to you about something important. They met at their usual spot, A small cafe near the hospital. Megan waited until they'd ordered before speaking. Sarah, I'm worried about you. I'm fine, just tired. The pregnancy. It's not the pregnancy. Megan's voice was gentle but firm. It's Marcus. Sarah's hands tightened around her water glass. What about Marcus? I see how you are around him, how carefully you choose your words, how you check your phone constantly, like you're afraid of missing a message. That's not normal, Sarah. Every marriage has its challenges. Does every marriage leave bruises? The question hung between them. Sarah looked down, unable to meet her friend's eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah. Megan reached across the table, covering Sarah's hand with her own. I love you, and I'm scared for you. Please let me help. I've already spoken to a lawyer who specializes in domestic violence cases. Her name is Catherine Walsh, and she's willing to meet with you, completely confidentially. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes. The relief of being seen, truly seen, warred with terror. Megan, you can't tell anyone. Marcus, he's not. I know he seems perfect to everyone else. They always do. Megan pulled a business card from her purse, pressing it into Sarah's palm. Just talk to her. That's all I'm asking. You have options. Sarah, you and the baby, you have options. Sarah stared at the card. Catherine Walsh, attorney at law, specializing in family law and domestic violence cases, a lifeline extended across a cafe table. I'll think about it. Promise me you'll call her. Today. I promise. They hugged goodbye in the parking lot. Sarah watched Megan drive away in her silver Honda, the business card burning in her pocket like a secret. She never saw Megan alive again. The call came 6 hours later. Sarah was in surgery when her phone started vibrating, the emergency bypass she'd set up for family cutting through the Do Not Disturb setting. She ignored it, focused on the gunshot wound she was repairing, but felt unease crawl up her spine. When she finally checked her phone, she had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. Then her father's name appeared on the screen. Dad? James Mitchell's voice was careful, controlled in the way that meant something terrible had happened. Sarah, I need you to find somewhere to sit down. What is it? There's been an accident. Megan's car went off an overpass on I-35. She didn't survive. The world tilted. Sarah gripped the wall of the surgical lounge, her vision tunneling. No, that's not. We just had lunch. She was fine. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. The next hours passed in a blur. Sarah drove to the accident scene on autopilot, her trauma surgeon's brain cataloging details even as grief threatened to overwhelm her. The skid marks on the road, the absence of brake marks, the twisted metal of Megan's car, barely recognizable. A police officer was interviewing witnesses. Sarah caught fragments, saw her car accelerate suddenly. Like she couldn't stop. Went straight through the barrier. Marcus appeared at her side, seemingly from nowhere. Sarah, baby, I came as soon as I heard. I'm so sorry. He wrapped his arms around her, and Sarah found herself clinging to him, needing something solid in a world that had suddenly turned incomprehensible. I don't understand. Megan's car was new. She just had it serviced. Sometimes these things just happen. Mechanical failures. It's tragic. Later, much later, investigators would discover that Megan's brake lines had been partially severed. Subtle enough to not fail immediately, but guaranteed to give out under sustained use. They'd trace the service records and find that yes, Megan had taken her car to a shop 3 days earlier, a shop owned by one of Marcus's business associates. But that discovery was months away. In the immediate aftermath, Sarah had only her grief and the terrible coincidence that her best friend had died hours after offering her an escape route. She found Catherine Walsh's business card in her coat pocket the next morning. Held it for a long moment, remembering Megan's concern, her determination to help. Then Sarah tore the card into small pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Some part of her already knew, though she couldn't yet admit it. Some part understood that Megan's death was not an accident, that speaking up had made her friend a target. That silence was the only way to survive. At Megan's funeral, Sarah stood between Marcus and her father, numb with shock and hormones and fear. Marcus held her hand throughout the service, the picture of a supportive husband. She felt his thumb rubbing circles on her palm, a gesture that had once been comforting, but now felt like marking territory. After the service, Elena found her. "Sarah, take whatever time you need. The hospital understands. I need to work. Sitting at home thinking about I can't." Elena studied her with those sharp eyes that had guided Sarah through residency. "You're 6 months pregnant and grieving your best friend. Please, take care of yourself." "I am. I'm fine. Work helps me focus." That night, alone in the bathroom while Marcus slept, Sarah found Megan's last text message, sent at 3:15 p.m., hours before her death. "Called Catherine. Meeting tomorrow at 10. Coming with me." Sarah deleted the message with shaking hands, then cleared it from the trash folder, erased any evidence that Megan had been trying to help her, protected Marcus without even realizing she was doing it, because that's what abuse does. It teaches you to be complicit in your own imprisonment. She looked at herself in the mirror, at her swollen belly and hollow eyes, whispered, "I'm sorry, Megan. I'm so sorry." The baby kicked, a flutter against her palm, a reminder that she wasn't just protecting herself anymore. Whatever choices she made affected this innocent life inside her. Sarah made a decision that night. She would survive, would get through the pregnancy, would protect her daughter at all costs. And if that meant staying quiet, staying small, staying trapped, then that's what she would do. It was the kind of decision that thousands of women make every day, the kind that looks like weakness from the outside but requires impossible strength to maintain. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus had already moved on to his next target, that even as she decided to stay, to endure, to protect, he was setting up the next devastating blow. Some traps have multiple chambers, each one deeper than the last. Sarah returned to work 3 days after Megan's funeral, against everyone's advice. The hospital became her sanctuary, the only place where she felt competent and in control. In the OR, she made life and death decisions with confidence. At home, she couldn't even decide what to wear without second-guessing herself. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly prominent beneath her scrubs. The baby was active, strong, measuring perfectly at every ultrasound. A healthy girl who deserved better than the chaos into which she was being born? Elena watched Sarah with increasing concern, but said nothing. Hospital administration had already suggested Sarah take early maternity leave, citing stress and the physical demands of surgery. Sarah had refused, knowing that work was the only thing keeping her sane. It was Ashley Torres who finally shattered what remained of Sarah's illusions. Ashley was a surgical resident, 26 years old, brilliant and ambitious. Sarah had been her mentor for the past year, guiding her through complicated procedures, writing glowing evaluations, championing her career. They'd developed what Sarah thought was genuine friendship, the kind built on mutual respect and shared passion for medicine. Sarah noticed Ashley's odd behavior gradually, the way she'd duck into empty rooms when Sarah approached, how she'd stopped asking questions during rounds, the knowing looks other residents gave her when Ashley's name came up. Then came the day Sarah found Ashley crying in the surgical lounge. "Ashley, what's wrong?" Sarah sat beside her, concerned. "Is it a patient?" Ashley's face went white. "Dr. Mitchell, I can't, whatever it is, we can work through it. Talk to me." "I'm pregnant." Sarah felt her own baby kick, as if sensing the moment's significance. "Oh, well, that's complicated, but manageable. We can discuss how to handle your residency schedule." "It's Marcus's baby." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah heard them but couldn't process them, as if they were in a language she didn't understand. What Ashley was crying harder now, words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm so sorry. It started 6 months ago. He said your marriage was over, that you were just staying together for appearances, that he loved me. I didn't know. I mean, I knew you were his wife, but he made it sound like—" Sarah stood abruptly, the world tilting. "You're lying." "I'm not. I'm so sorry. I never meant, I think I'm in love with him." The surgical lounge had glass walls. Sarah was dimly aware of people stopping to stare, of whispered conversations, of her private humiliation becoming public spectacle. She walked out with as much dignity as she could muster, her vision tunneling, breath coming in short gasps. She made it to an empty exam room before the panic attack hit. Her heart raced, palms sweating, the room spinning. She pressed her hands against the wall, trying to ground herself, to breathe, to think. A resident found her there and called Elena, who arrived within minutes. "Sarah, look at me. Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth." Slowly, the panic subsided enough for Sarah to speak. "Did you know about Marcus and Ashley?" Elena's face was answer enough. "There were rumors? I didn't want to believe them. I certainly didn't want to tell you while you were pregnant and still grieving Megan." "I'm sorry," Sarah laughed, a brittle sound. "Everyone knew. Everyone but me. No one was certain. Hospital gossip is, she's pregnant. Elena. With his baby? My husband's baby." Elena closed her eyes briefly. "Oh, Sarah. I need to go home. You need to sit down before you pass out. You're 7 months pregnant and having a panic attack. Give yourself a minute." But Sarah couldn't stay still. Couldn't sit in this hospital where everyone knew her marriage was a joke, where her husband had been sleeping with her own resident. She gathered her things and drove home on autopilot, her mind a blank white space. Marcus's car was in the driveway. She found him in his office, as usual, surrounded by architectural plans. "We need to talk." He looked up, and she saw the guilt flash across his face before he could mask it. "Sarah, is it true Ashley Torres? Is she carrying your baby?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he stood, moving toward her with his hands raised as if approaching a dangerous animal. "Sarah, let me explain. Is it true? It's complicated." Sarah felt something inside her break. Not her heart that had been broken so many times it was held together with scar tissue. Something deeper, her ability to pretend, her willingness to make excuses. "Get out. Sarah, you're being hysterical. The pregnancy hormones. Get out of this house. Get out of my life. Get out." She was screaming now, something she'd never done before. Years of swallowed words erupting at once. Marcus's face shifted from conciliatory to cold. "This is my house. I'm not going anywhere. You want to leave, go ahead. But you're not taking my daughter." "Your daughter? You can't even pretend to be faithful while I'm carrying your child. But you think you have rights to her? I have every right. And if you try to leave, try to take her from me, I'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you are." The panic attacks, the emotional outbursts. Dr. Cole's notes documenting your anxiety, your inability to cope. Who do you think a judge will believe? The threat was clear. Sarah felt her fury drain away, replaced by exhausted despair. She'd walked into a trap so carefully constructed, she'd never seen the walls. "Why?" Her voice came out small. "Why marry me if you were going to do this?" Marcus's smile was cold. "Because you were useful. The daughter of an FBI agent, a respected surgeon. You gave me credibility. And you were so eager to believe I loved you. It was almost too easy." Sarah sank into the nearest chair, one hand on her belly. The baby was kicking frantically, responding to her mother's distress. "I want a divorce." "No. You can't stop me from..." "Can't I, Sarah? I own this city. I have connections you can't imagine. Judges who owe me favors. Cops who look the other way. Your precious father might have been FBI, but he's retired now. He has no power here. And you," Marcus laughed, "you're a pregnant woman with a documented history of anxiety and emotional instability. You're not leaving me. Not now. Not ever." He walked out, leaving Sarah alone with the ruins of her life. That night, Sarah lay in the guest room with the door locked, staring at the ceiling, 7 months pregnant, homeless in her own home, trapped by a man who'd never loved her. She thought about Megan, about Catherine Walsh's business card, destroyed, about every choice that had led her to this moment. And she thought about her father, the man who'd taught her to trust her instincts, to stand up for herself, to never be a victim. She'd disappointed him so profoundly she couldn't bear to tell him the truth. But maybe there was one person who could still help. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her email, found Elena's contact information. Started typing. "Elena, I need to tell you something. The truth about my marriage, about everything. Can we meet tomorrow?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Outside, the Austin night was warm and alive with sound. Somewhere in the darkness, Marcus was probably with Ashley, celebrating his victory. Somewhere, Sarah's father slept peacefully, unaware his daughter was in danger. And somewhere, a clock was ticking toward the moment when silence would finally, irreversibly, fail. Elena Cross had survived in a male-dominated field for 30 years by being observant, strategic, and occasionally ruthless when protecting people she cared about. She'd seen the signs in Sarah for months but had respected the younger woman's privacy. Now, reading Sarah's email at 5 in the morning, Elena felt fury and determination in equal measure. They met before the morning shift in Elena's office. The door closed and locked. Sarah looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her pregnant belly prominent beneath loose clothing. "Tell me everything," Elena said. "And I mean everything." Sarah did. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. The first shove, the miscarriage that wasn't an accident, the therapy sessions with Marcus's friend, the mounting isolation, Megan's death, Ashley's pregnancy, years of abuse condensed into 30 minutes of painful honesty. When she finished, Elena was silent for a long moment. "The therapy sessions, you said Dr. Richard Cole. Did Marcus choose him?" "Yes. Why?" Elena pulled up a photo on her computer. A charity gala from 5 years earlier. Marcus and Dr. Cole laughing together, arms around each other's shoulders. They're not just acquaintances, they're close friends. Every session has been documented, but not objectively. "He's been building a case against you, Sarah." Sarah felt sick. What kind of case? Fitness as a mother. Mental stability. He's creating a paper trail that would support a custody battle. Or worse, if something happened to you, it would explain why you were unstable in the weeks before. "You think he's planning to..." "I think Marcus is dangerous in ways we're only beginning to understand." "Megan's death wasn't an accident, was it?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. Elena leaned forward. "Here's what we're going to do. I have a friend who runs a safe house for women leaving abusive situations. We're going to get you and the baby somewhere secure. Then we're going to build an actual case with evidence that can't be manipulated. Marcus said he owns half the judges in this city. He might, but he doesn't own them all, and he doesn't own the truth." Elena pulled out a small recording device, no bigger than a thumb drive. "Wear this. Record your conversations with him. Texas is a one-party consent state, so it's legal. Get him to admit what he's done." Sarah stared at the device. "And then we go to the police with everything. The medical records from your miscarriage, Megan's death, the relationship between Marcus and Dr. Cole. We build a case so overwhelming that not even Marcus's connections can bury it." "What if it's not enough?" Elena's eyes were hard. "Then we make it enough. But Sarah, you have to be smart about this. You can't let Marcus know you're planning to leave. Can't change your behavior. Everything has to seem normal until we're ready to move. After the baby is born, you're 7 months pregnant. Moving you now would be complicated, and the stress could endanger the baby. So we wait, we document, and when the time is right, we get you both out." Sarah felt hope stir for the first time in months. "You really think this will work?" "I think you're stronger than Marcus ever gave you credit for. And I think he's underestimated what happens when he threatens people I love." Elena squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore. Sarah, we're going to get you through this." Over the next 6 weeks, Sarah lived a double life. At home, she was the defeated wife, submissive and careful. She endured Marcus's increasingly blatant affair with Ashley, his casual cruelty, his reminders that she was trapped. She slept in the guest room, avoided confrontation, made herself small, but secretly, she was gathering evidence. The recording device captured hours of conversations Marcus admitting to pushing her during the miscarriage, his threats about custody, his relationship with Dr. Cole, his casual mention of taking care of Megan's suspicions. Sarah also started documenting her injuries photographically, creating a detailed medical record of abuse. Elena helped her establish a bank account Marcus didn't know about, transferred money secretly, built a financial safety net. They were careful, paranoid, even because Marcus was watching too. his controlling nature making him suspicious of any change in Sarah's behavior. Then, one morning, James Mitchell collapsed in his own kitchen. Sarah got the call while she was reviewing surgical cases. Her father, who'd run 5 miles every morning since he was 20, had suffered what appeared to be a massive stroke. He was unconscious, unresponsive, his prognosis uncertain. Sarah rushed to the hospital where he'd been taken, her heart in her throat. She found him in the ICU, surrounded by machines, his vital signs dangerously unstable. The neurologist's report was grim, severe brain damage, possibly permanent. Marcus arrived shortly after, playing the concerned son-in-law. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?" Sarah stared at him, and suddenly she knew with absolute certainty. "You did this." "What's Sarah? Your father had a stroke." "You did this, just like Megan. You got rid of him because he was getting suspicious." Marcus's face was a mask of concern, but his eyes were cold. "You're in shock. Grief is making you paranoid." Later, much later, toxicology reports would reveal traces of a drug in James's system, a blood thinner in doses designed to cause catastrophic bleeding, the same drug that had been prescribed for Marcus's mother, who died 2 years earlier from a similar stroke. But those results were weeks away. In the moment, Sarah had only her certainty and her helplessness. "I'm going to destroy you," she whispered. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you are." Marcus leaned close, his voice too low for the ICU nurses to hear. "Who's going to believe you? The emotionally unstable pregnant woman whose best friend died in a tragic accident and whose father just had a stroke. You're surrounded by tragedy. Sarah, people are already wondering if maybe you're the common denominator." He was right, and they both knew it. Marcus had orchestrated everything so carefully that Sarah looked like either the most unlucky woman alive or someone whose presence brought disaster. That night, Sarah sat in her father's hospital room, holding his unresponsive hand. 8 months pregnant now, exhausted, terrified, and more alone than she'd ever been. Elena found her there at midnight. "Sarah, you need to rest. The stress isn't good for the baby. He did this. Marcus, he poisoned my father. I believe you, but we need proof. We'll never get it. He's too careful, too connected." Sarah felt despair wrap around her like a shroud. "I should just give up, take the baby and disappear. That's exactly what he wants you to think. That you're powerless?" Elena sat beside her. "But you're not. Tomorrow, we're moving you to the safe house, whether you're ready or not, because the next target is you, Sarah, or the baby, and I won't let that happen." Sarah looked at her father's still face, at the machines keeping him alive, at the evidence of what Marcus was capable of. Okay. Tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow." What neither of them knew was that Marcus had been monitoring Sarah's email, had installed tracking software on her phone weeks ago, knew about the recordings, the safe house, every detail of their plan, and he was already preparing his counter move. Some traps spring when you try to escape them. The morning Sarah was supposed to leave, Elena didn't show up for their morning meeting. Sarah waited in the hospital cafeteria, her go bag hidden in her locker, emergency contacts memorized, ready to disappear into the safe house network that had been prepared for her. 20 minutes late became 40. Sarah called Elena's cell phone. No answer. Called her office. No answer. A terrible certainty grew in her chest. She was heading to the parking garage when she heard the explosion. Felt it. Really, a percussion wave that rattled windows and set off car alarms. Sarah ran, as much as a woman in her 9th month could run. Following the sound and the screaming, Elena's car was a fireball in the parking structure, flames licking toward the concrete ceiling. Hospital security was already responding, pulling vehicles away, calling for fire trucks. Sarah stood frozen, her medical training cataloging what even she couldn't save. No one survived explosions like that. No one. A security guard caught her arm as she tried to move closer. "Ma'am, you can't. That's Dr. Cross's car. She's the chief of surgery. We have to—" "Ma'am, there's nothing anyone can do." Sarah watched Elena burn and felt something inside her extinguish along with that fire. Her mentor, her friend, her only ally, gone in seconds. reduced to smoke and ash and terrible understanding. Marcus had known everything, had eliminated the one person with the power to help Sarah escape. She turned and walked back into the hospital on numb legs, went to her locker in the surgical wing, found her go-bag gone, her personal items rifled through. The recording device Elena had given her was sitting on the top shelf, crushed into pieces. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Tragic about Dr. Cross. These gas leaks are so dangerous. Come home. We need to talk. She stared at the message, at the barely veiled threat in those words. Understood that going home might mean never leaving again. But where else could she go? Her father was in a coma. Her best friend was dead. Her mentor was Ash. Marcus had systematically eliminated everyone who could help her, could believe her, could intervene. Sarah placed her hand on her swollen belly, felt her daughter moving inside her, thought about the life this child deserved, the world Sarah wanted to give her. A world without violence, without fear, without a father who killed anyone who stood in his way. She made a decision. Sarah went to the administrative offices and requested a meeting with the hospital board, told them everything, showed them the documentation she'd been keeping, the photographs of injuries, the financial records proving Marcus's connection to Dr. Cole, named names, detailed abuse, outlined a pattern of violence that had now claimed 3 lives. The board members listened with increasingly horrified expressions. The hospital's attorney took notes. The chairman promised immediate action. Sarah felt hope stir. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. Maybe institutional power could protect her where personal connections had failed. She was wrong. Within 2 hours, Marcus's lawyers had descended on the hospital. They brought Dr. Cole's therapy notes, documenting Sarah's deteriorating mental state, brought testimony from colleagues who'd noticed her erratic behavior and inappropriate accusations. Aaronova brought evidence of her pattern of seeing conspiracies and paranoid ideation. They painted a picture of a woman in crisis, mentally unstable, dangerous even. A woman whose tragic circumstances, her friend's death, her father's illness, Elena's accident, had pushed her into psychotic break. And because Marcus had been so careful, so methodical in building this narrative, the hospital board had to listen, had to consider, had to, ultimately, suggest that Sarah take immediate medical leave for psychiatric evaluation. For your own safety and the safety of your patients, the chairman said, not quite meeting her eyes. Sarah walked out of that meeting and understood, finally, the full scope of Marcus's trap. He'd turned her truth into evidence of madness, made her attempts to escape proof of instability. Every move she'd made to save herself had tightened the noose. She sat in her car in the parking garage, where hours earlier Elena had died, and felt despair so complete it was almost peaceful. This was how Marcus won, not through violence, though he was certainly capable of that, through patience, manipulation, and systematic destruction of anyone who might believe his victims. Sarah's phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Dr. Mitchell, this is Detective Lisa Haynes with Austin PD. I'm calling about Elena Cross's death. Sarah's breath caught. Yes, I know you were close with her, and I know you've made some serious allegations about your husband. I'd like to talk to you, unofficially, off the record. Would that be possible? Why would you believe me when no one else does? Because Elena Cross sent me an email last night, time-stamped at 11:47 p.m. She said if anything happened to her, I should talk to you. That you had evidence about several suspicious deaths, including Megan Torres? A pause. Dr. Mitchell, gas leaks don't send warning emails before they happen. Sarah felt tears of relief streak down her face. Elena had known, had prepared a backup plan even Sarah hadn't known about. One last act of protection from beyond the grave. Where can we meet? Not at the station. Marcus has friends there, and not anywhere public. Do you know the coffee shop on West 6th, near the university? Yes. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Come alone. Sarah hung up and allowed herself one moment of hope, one more chance at freedom, one last play in a game that had already cost so many lives. She went home, where Marcus was waiting, prepared herself for whatever came next. Because tomorrow, she would tell Detective Haynes everything, would hand over every piece of evidence, would break the silence that had been her prison for so long. She just had to survive one more night. Marcus was surprisingly calm when she walked in, almost cheerful. He poured her a glass of water, offered to make dinner, asked about her day as if he didn't know he'd murdered her mentor that morning. "I heard about Dr. Cross. Such a tragedy. You must be devastated." Sarah accepted the water, forcing herself to sip it. "Yes, you look exhausted. Why don't you rest? I'll take care of everything." She went to the guest room, the only place she felt marginally safe, and locked the door. Sat on the bed with her hands on her belly, feeling the baby's movements. So close to delivery now. Maybe 2 weeks, and then they could run, disappear, start over somewhere. Marcus couldn't find them. She just had to make it 2 more weeks. Sarah picked up her phone to set an alarm for the morning meeting with Detective Haynes. That's when she noticed the glass of water on her nightstand. The same water Marcus had given her downstairs, though she didn't remember bringing it up. And suddenly the room was tilting, her vision blurring, her limbs heavy and unresponsive. Sarah tried to stand, to reach for her phone, to call for help, but her legs wouldn't support her. She collapsed on the bed, consciousness fading, her last thought for the baby inside her. Marcus appeared in the doorway, watching her with satisfaction. "It's time for this to end. Sarah, time for one more tragic accident." The world went black. Sarah woke to pain, contractions, hard and regular, radiating through her body. She was lying at the top of the stairs she'd walked up and down 1,000 times, the stairs that would, in Marcus's carefully constructed narrative, claim one more victim. She tried to move, but her body felt disconnected, drugged, could barely lift her head, let alone stand. The baby was coming, though. She could feel it, the pressure, the urgency. Too early. 2 weeks too early. Marcus crouched beside her, his face a mask of false concern. "I called 911. They're on their way. Such a terrible accident. Sarah falling down the stairs. The stress of Dr. Cross's death. Your father's illness. The pregnancy. Everyone will understand." Sarah tried to speak, but her tongue was thick, uncooperative. Managed one word. "Why?" "Because you were going to leave, and I couldn't allow that. You're mine. Sarah, your baby is mine. And if I can't have you both, then no one will." He placed his hand on her shoulder, positioned her at the top of the stairs. Sarah understood with terrible clarity what he was about to do. The final scene in his elaborate play, the pregnant wife, unstable and grieving, who tragically fell. "It'll be quick," Marcus said. "And afterward, I'll raise our daughter. Teach her how the world really works. That power is the only thing that matters." Sarah summoned every ounce of strength she had left, reached out, grabbed the stair railing with one hand, Marcus's shirt with the other. If she was going down, she was taking him with her. They fell together, tumbling down the stairs in a tangle of limbs. Sarah tried to protect her belly, curling around it even as her body struck the hard edges of the steps. Heard Marcus cursing, felt his grip loosening. The world was pain and motion, and the sound of their bodies impacting wood. They hit the landing hard. Sarah's head cracked against the floor, and darkness swallowed her again. When she woke, she was in the hospital. Machines beeped steadily around her. Her abdomen was bandaged, and she felt wrong. Empty. She reached down instinctively. "Your baby's okay." The voice was unfamiliar. Sarah turned her head to see Detective Lisa Haynes sitting beside her bed. "Emergency C-section. She's in the NICU, but she's stable, strong, like her mother." Sarah tried to speak, but her throat was raw. Haynes held up a cup of water, helped her sip through a straw. "What happened? You fell down your stairs. Or were pushed, according to your toxicology report. You had enough sedatives in your system to drop a horse. Marcus claimed he found you at the bottom, called 911. But here's the interesting part." Haynes pulled out her phone, showing Sarah security footage. "Your neighbor has a doorbell camera. Caught Marcus dragging you to the top of the stairs before the fall." Sarah felt tears of relief. Evidence. Finally. Evidence that even Marcus couldn't manipulate. Where is he? In custody. We arrested him this morning. The DA's filing charges: attempted murder, felony assault, and we're reopening Megan Torres's case and investigating Elena Cross's death. Haynes leaned forward. Sarah, Elena gave me access to files she'd been keeping. Evidence about Marcus going back years. She was thorough. Between that and the security footage, we have him cold. My father, still in the ICU, but his toxicology came back positive for poison. We're charging Marcus with that too. Sarah closed her eyes, letting it sink in. She'd survived. Her daughter had survived. And Marcus was finally going to face consequences. I need to see my baby. Haynes wheeled her down to the NICU. Sarah's daughter was tiny, just over 4 pounds, but her vital signs were strong. She had Sarah's dark hair and Marcus's nose, a reminder that even monsters can create something pure. Sarah reached through the incubator's porthole, touching her daughter's miniature hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around hers instinctively, that ancient reflex of survival. I'm going to name her Elena, Sarah whispered, after the woman who saved us both. Over the next weeks, Sarah recovered physically while her daughter grew stronger. James Mitchell woke from his coma, his recovery slow but steady. The poison had caused permanent damage, but he was alive, which was more than Marcus had intended. The trial was sensational. Marcus's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of evidence. Dr. Cole lost his license and faced criminal charges for his role in the conspiracy. Ashley Torres, granted immunity for her testimony, revealed years of manipulation. Marcus was convicted on all counts: the murder of Megan Torres and Elena Cross, the attempted murder of James Mitchell and Sarah, assault, conspiracy, fraud. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. In his final statement, Marcus showed no remorse. You think you've won, but I built that life you're living, that house, that career. All of it was mine, and I let you share it. Without me, you're nothing. Sarah, holding baby Elena in her arms, met his eyes for the last time. No, Marcus, without you, I'm finally free. 2 years after Marcus's conviction, Sarah sat on the back porch of her new home, watching Elena chase butterflies in the yard. The house was smaller than the one she'd shared with Marcus, but it was hers. Truly hers, purchased with her own money, filled with laughter instead of fear. James Mitchell sat beside her, his recovery remarkable, though he still walked with a slight limp. She has your determination, he said, watching his granddaughter. And your strength. I wasn't strong, Dad. I was trapped. Strength isn't about never being trapped. It's about finding your way out. He took her hand. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Didn't protect you. You couldn't have known. Marcus fooled everyone. Sarah squeezed his fingers. But you're here now. That's what matters. The doorbell rang. Sarah answered to find Detective Haynes, no longer in uniform but carrying a bottle of wine. Hope I'm not intruding. Not at all. Come in. They sat on the porch while Elena played, talked about everything and nothing. Haynes had become a friend, one of the few people who truly understood what Sarah had survived. I've been working with a domestic violence prevention organization, Haynes said. They asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser. I was hoping you might come, share your story. Sarah hesitated. She'd testified at Marcus's trial, endured the media attention, had her trauma dissected in public. The idea of voluntarily revisiting it felt overwhelming. I know it's a lot to ask, Haynes continued, but hearing from survivors makes a difference, helps other women recognize the signs, gives them courage to leave. Sarah thought about Megan, who'd tried to help her, about Elena, who died protecting her, about all the women who didn't have allies, who were still trapped in the silence she'd barely escaped. I'll do it. The night of the fundraiser, Sarah stood backstage, her heart pounding. Elena was with James, safe at home. Sarah had written and rewritten her speech, trying to find words adequate to contain the complexity of abuse and survival. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, looked out at hundreds of faces, and began to speak. My name is Sarah Mitchell. 2 years ago, my husband tried to kill me and our unborn daughter. Before that night, he'd killed 2 women who tried to help me escape and poisoned my father. And for years leading up to that, I let it happen. She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. I say let not because I'm blaming myself, but because I want you to understand how abuse works. It doesn't announce itself with violence. It starts with isolation, control, small moments that make you doubt yourself. And by the time you realize you're trapped, the walls are already built. Sarah shared her story, holding nothing back. The miscarriage Marcus had caused, the therapist who betrayed her, the systematic elimination of everyone who might help. The moment she woke up at the top of the stairs, knowing she was about to die. I survived because of luck, timing, and because one woman refused to stay silent even when silence would have kept her safe. Dr. Elena Cross died saving me, and I carry that with me every day. She looked out at the audience, saw women with tears on their faces, recognition in their eyes. If you're in an abusive relationship, please hear me. It's not your fault. You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're in a situation designed to make you feel powerless. But you're not. Sarah pulled out her phone, held it up. This is a lifeline. One call can start your escape. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is always available. Local shelters exist. People want to help you. You just have to break the silence. She finished to standing ovation. But what mattered more were the women who approached her afterward, the ones who whispered, "That's happening to me," the ones who asked for resources, the ones taking the first terrifying steps toward freedom. Driving home that night, Sarah felt exhausted but purposeful. She'd transformed her trauma into something useful, her pain into protection for others. It didn't erase what she'd suffered, but it gave it meaning. Baby Elena was asleep when Sarah got home. She stood in the nursery doorway, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall. This perfect life that had somehow survived chaos. "Your mother did something important tonight," James said quietly, appearing beside her. "Elena Cross would be proud." "I hope so." Sarah turned to face him. "Dad, I've been thinking about going back to work. Not full-time surgery yet, but maybe consulting, teaching. I miss medicine." "You should. You're brilliant at it." He paused. "But take care of yourself too. Healing isn't linear." Sarah knew that better than anyone. Some days were good, full of hope and progress. Others, she still jumped at sudden noises, still checked locks obsessively, still had nightmares about falling downstairs. She was in therapy now, real therapy with a trauma specialist who understood domestic violence, was learning to recognize the difference between caution and paranoia, between healthy boundaries and isolation born from fear. It was work, hard work, but for the first time in years, Sarah was working towards something instead of just surviving. A few months later, Sarah accepted a position teaching trauma surgery at the medical school. Her first lecture was on recognizing abuse in patients. She taught residents how to ask the right questions, how to create safe spaces for disclosure, how to document injuries properly for potential prosecution. She thought about the ER nurse who'd accepted her explanation about falling down the stairs, the colleagues who'd seen her bruises and said nothing, the system that had failed her repeatedly. "You'll see patients who are being abused," she told her students. "Some will tell you, most won't. Your job is to create an opportunity for disclosure without judgment or pressure, to document carefully, to believe them when they trust you with their truth, because sometimes you're the only person asking." One student raised her hand. "But what if they don't leave? What if you offer help and they refuse?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Then you respect their choice while making sure they know the door is always open. Leaving is dangerous, often more dangerous than staying. They have to make that decision when they're ready, with support in place. Your job is to plant seeds, not force flowers to bloom." After the lecture, a young resident approached her. "Dr. Mitchell, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story. It helped me recognize something in my own relationship." Sarah gave her resources, contact information, a listening ear, watched another woman take those first scary steps toward freedom, and felt the purpose that had carried her through her darkest days. That evening, she came home to find Elena toddling around the living room, James supervising with the caution of a new grandparent. The house smelled like dinner cooking, and sunlight streamed through windows Sarah never had to worry about leaving uncovered. Mama? Elena launched herself at Sarah with the enthusiasm of a 2-year-old who hadn't seen her mother in hours. Sarah scooped her up, burying her face in her daughter's hair, breathing in the simple joy of this moment, this normal, ordinary, miraculous moment of safety and love. This was what Marcus had tried to take from her, and this was what she'd fought so hard to reclaim. That night, after Elena was asleep and James had gone home, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and allowed herself to reflect on how far she'd come. From the terrified woman who'd hidden bruises beneath her white coat to someone who could stand on stages and teach residents and build a life on her own terms, the journey wasn't over. Trauma didn't have an end date, but Sarah had learned to carry it without letting it define her. She opened her laptop and started writing an email to the domestic violence organization. She had ideas for expanding their services, suggestions for better coordination with hospitals, proposals for training programs, because she'd survived for a reason, not just to reclaim her own life, but to make sure other women had better chances at survival too. As she typed, Sarah felt the ghost of Elena Cross looking over her shoulder, approving, felt Megan's spirit urging her forward, felt the strength of all the women who'd faced similar battles and emerged, scarred but unbroken. 5 years after Marcus's conviction, Sarah stood in the observation gallery of a courtroom, watching another trial unfold. The defendant was a prominent businessman accused of murdering his wife. The prosecution was using strategies Sarah had helped develop, evidence-gathering protocols she'd worked with law enforcement to implement. Detective Haynes sat beside her, now promoted to lead the domestic violence unit. This is the 16th case we've successfully prosecuted using your protocols. 16 women who got justice? And how many who didn't report? Sarah asked quietly. That's what keeps me up at night. The ones still trapped. You can't save everyone. No, but I can keep trying. After the verdict, guilty on all counts, Sarah and Haynes went for coffee at their usual place. The same coffee shop where they'd first met 5 years earlier, where Sarah had shown up drugged and desperate and on the verge of being murdered. You ever think about dating again? Haynes asked. Elena's getting older, asking questions about why she doesn't have a dad like her friends. Sarah had thought about it, had even gone on a few dates over the years. But trauma had made her cautious, and trust didn't come easily anymore. Maybe someday, right now, Elena and I are enough. Fair. Just remember, not every man is Marcus. I know, but it only takes one Marcus to ruin your life, and they don't wear signs. Sarah smiled to soften the words. I'm okay. Really. Happy even. That's more than I thought possible once. They parted ways, and Sarah drove to Elena's school for pickup. Her daughter was 7 now, bright and curious and blessedly untraumatized by the circumstances of her birth. Sarah had been careful about what Elena knew, age-appropriate honesty, without burdening her with adult terrors. Mommy, can Grandpa come for dinner? Elena buckled herself into the car seat, chattering about her day. Already invited him. He's bringing your favorite dessert. James Mitchell had made a remarkable recovery. Still had some lingering effects from the poisoning, but he'd returned to consulting work, helping the FBI with criminal psychology profiles. He'd also become an advocate for domestic violence prevention, using his law enforcement credibility to push for better training and protocols. Father and daughter had grown closer through shared trauma, their relationship rebuilt on honesty and mutual respect. Sarah had forgiven him for not seeing the signs earlier, understood that manipulators like Marcus were skilled at hiding their true nature. That evening, the three of them sat around Sarah's dining room table, Elena chattering about school while James and Sarah exchanged amused glances. This ordinary domesticity felt miraculous to Sarah. She'd once believed this kind of peace was impossible. After Elena went to bed, James and Sarah sat on the porch with tea. I got a call today, he said, from the FBI. They want me to develop a training program about recognizing coercive control in domestic situations, partnering with your hospital protocols. That's wonderful, Dad. I was hoping you'd help. Your perspective as both a physician and a survivor is invaluable. Sarah considered. It would mean more public exposure, more time spent revisiting her trauma, but it would also mean more protection for other women. I'll do it. They worked on the program together over the next months, creating comprehensive training that addressed the psychological aspects of abuse, the ways victims become trapped, the signs that healthcare providers and law enforcement should recognize. Sarah presented at conferences, her story becoming a case study in survival and resilience. She was careful to honor Megan's and Elena's memories, to ensure their sacrifices weren't forgotten. One day, she received a letter from Ashley Torres, the young woman who'd had an affair with Marcus, who'd been manipulated into pregnancy and complicity. Ashley had served minimal time for her cooperation with the prosecution, but she'd lost her medical career. The letter was simple. "I'm sorry. I was young and stupid and believed his lies. I hope you found peace. I'm trying to find mine." Sarah read it twice, then filed it away. Forgiveness was complicated. Ashley had been a victim too, but her choices had contributed to Sarah's suffering. Maybe someday Sarah would respond, but not yet. Elena Mitchell grew into a confident child, protected but not coddled. Sarah was careful about that balance, ensuring her daughter understood safety without inheriting her mother's trauma. They had conversations, age-appropriate, about respecting boundaries and recognizing when someone was treating you badly. "Mommy, why don't I have a daddy?" Elena asked one evening when she was 9. Sarah had prepared for this question for years. "You do have a father. His name was Marcus, but he made very bad choices and hurt people. So he's in prison? Did he hurt you?" "Yes." "I'm sorry, Mommy." Elena hugged her fiercely. "I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. Grandpa says I'm strong like you." "You're strong like you. That's even better." When Elena was 10, Sarah met someone. His name was David, a pediatrician at the hospital, divorced with a daughter of his own. He was patient, kind, willing to move at Sarah's pace. Their first date was coffee in broad daylight in a public place. Their second was lunch. They didn't kiss until the 5th date, and even then, Sarah had to remind herself that flinching was a trauma response, not a present reality. David understood. He'd done his own work, processed his own failed marriage. Together, they built something careful and honest, with communication and boundaries respected on both sides. A year later, they blended their families. 2 girls who became sisters, 2 adults who'd been burned before finding each other. It wasn't perfect. Healing never is, but it was real. Sarah never forgot the women who'd saved her. The hospital established the Elena Cross Memorial Fund for domestic violence prevention. Megan Torres's name went on a scholarship for medical students interested in advocacy work. James Mitchell wrote a book about his daughter's case, using it to highlight systematic failures in protecting abuse victims. And Sarah continued her work, teaching, advocating, creating safer spaces for women to disclose and escape. One evening, 15 years after her escape, Sarah stood before another fundraiser crowd. Gray was starting to thread through her hair. Elena was 22 now, in medical school, planning to specialize in emergency medicine. The little girl who'd been delivered by emergency C-section while her mother lay drugged and broken was now a young woman dedicated to saving lives. "I'm often asked about forgiveness," Sarah told the crowd. "Whether I've forgiven Marcus for what he did? The truth is complicated. I've forgiven myself for not leaving sooner. I've made peace with my choices. But forgiving him, that's not my priority. What matters is that I broke free, that my daughter never knew his violence, that the work we've done together has helped thousands of other women escape similar situations." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "Survival isn't a destination, it's a practice. Every day, I choose to survive well, to build a life defined not by what was done to me, but by what I did with my freedom once I reclaimed it. That's the real victory." The applause was thunderous. But what Sarah valued more were the conversations afterward. The women who approached her, some seeking help, others offering their own stories of survival. The community of survivors and advocates, growing stronger every year. Driving home that night, David beside her, Sarah thought about the girl she'd been at 29, so lost, so trapped, so certain she deserved the abuse she endured. She wanted to reach back through time and tell that frightened woman, "You'll make it through this. You'll not only survive, but thrive. You'll build something beautiful from the ashes of your destruction." But time doesn't work that way. All Sarah could do was live well, love better, and help other women find their own paths to freedom. At home, Elena was waiting, fresh from her hospital shift, exhausted but animated. "Mom, I had a patient today. A woman with accidental injuries that were clearly abuse. I did what you taught me. Created a safe space. Documented everything. Gave her resources. Did she take them? Not yet, but she knows someone saw her. Someone believed her. That's a start. Sarah hugged her daughter, this fierce young woman who'd been born from trauma but refused to be defined by it. You did good, sweetheart. That's all we can do. Offer the door and let people walk through when they're ready. That night, Sarah stood in her backyard, looking up at the stars. Thought about Megan and Elena Cross, about all the women who'd suffered and survived and sometimes hadn't survived at all. Felt their presence like a benediction, a reminder that her freedom had been paid for in blood and sacrifice. She would honor that sacrifice by living fully, by helping others escape, by never ever going silent again. Because in the end, that's what survival meant. Not just staying alive, but reclaiming your voice, using it to shout back at the darkness, creating light for others to follow. Sarah Mitchell had been broken, abused, nearly murdered, but she'd emerged from that fire tempered like steel, stronger in the broken places, determined that her daughter and daughters like her would never have to hide bruises beneath white coats or lie about how they got their injuries. The world was still full of men like Marcus Bennett, but it was also full of women like Sarah Mitchell, women who refused to be victims anymore, women who turned their trauma into transformation, their pain into purpose. And that, Sarah thought, was a revolution worth fighting for.